On the evening of July 20th, 1973, Hong Kong's then police commissioner, Charles Sutcliffe, who was hosting a party at his home on Victoria Peak, received a phone call. The call was from a subordinate official who informed Sutcliffe about the death of renowned Hong Kong martial artist Bruce Lee, who was in the midst of preparing for his new movie, Game of Death. Upon hearing this news, all the guests present rushed to the door and drove their cars to Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Bruce Lee had been brought to the hospital in an ambulance an hour earlier. By the time journalists from major Hong Kong media outlets arrived at the hospital, the police had already cordoned off the area. At 11:30 p.m. on the evening of July 20th, 1973, Bruce Lee was officially pronounced dead at the hospital. Bruce Lee had brought Chinese martial arts and kung fu film to Hollywood, sparking a kung fu craze and spreading it worldwide. In the 1970s, numerous Hong Kong kung fu film actors and producers had ambitious plans to go to Hollywood, and everyone felt a bright future ahead. However, all of this came to a halt with Bruce Lee's untimely demise. Like stars in the sky, Hong Kong kung fu film has shone brightly at times and faded at others over the course of nearly a century, yet it has never truly disappeared. The earliest Chinese kung fu films told stories of wandering heroes, where kung fu essentially represented the martial arts skills of these wandering swordsmen. Throughout history, China has never lacked biographical accounts of these wandering heroes. Over 2,000 years ago, the Chinese historian Sima Qian documented the real-life wandering heroes during the Qin and Han dynasties in his book. As time passed, the image of wandering heroes appeared in various folk tales, giving rise to China's unique martial arts culture. In the year 1909, Jewish-Russian individual Benjamin Brodsky established the Asia Film Company in Shanghai. Having previously faced challenges in the film industry in the United States, he saw the relatively untapped potential of the Chinese film market as a lucrative opportunity. In the same year, Sun Yat-sen, the founder of the Kuomintang, recognized the need for military strength for an armed uprising. As a result, he entrusted Chen Kung-che, a member of the Alliance Society, to organize the Qinwu Athletic Association. This organization brought numerous folk martial artists, including Huo Yuanjia, onto the historical stage. Meanwhile, Brodsky also filmed several movies starring Chinese actors in Hong Kong and Shanghai, such as the earliest Hong Kong short film Stealing a Roast Duck and the narrative film Zhuangzi Tests His Wife, co-directed with Li Minwei, among others. However, not long after, the 1911 revolution erupted in China in 1911, plunging Brodsky's film career in China into a predicament. Following the victory of the 1911 revolution, his career didn't show much improvement. The 1911 revolution overthrew the rule of the Qing Empire. As the rulers of the Qing Empire were of foreign nationality, many folk arts of the indigenous Chinese ethnic groups were promoted during this time. Coupled with the advancement of the printing and news industries, the novels of the school of Mandarin ducks and butterflies became popular, featuring stories often centered around folk knights errant. The establishment of the Republic of China gave many martial artists who had participated in the 1911 revolution a voice. Especially after the Russo-Japanese War of 1905, many Chinese believed that the reason for Japan's victory was the Bushido spirit. Chinese martial arts were also seen as a national symbol and were vigorously promoted. Consequently, the government of the Republic of China established the Central Martial Arts Academy to enhance physical fitness and foster national self-confidence. Subsequently, the Chinese military and schools began to incorporate martial arts into their curriculum. In 1913, an American named Yashil also believed that making films in China could lead to wealth. He bought the Asia Film Company from Brodsky. Films had been appearing in Shanghai for over a decade, but there had not been a truly Chinese film. Yashil found a young man fluent in English named Sichuan Zhang at a foreign firm to serve as a production consultant. A year later, Sichuan Zhang invited Zheng Zhengqiu to establish the Shinmin Film Company together for film shooting and production. Meanwhile, Asia Film Company was responsible for funding, equipment, and distribution. Xinmin Film produced China's first narrative short film, The Difficult Couple. Despite its very rudimentary production and the fact that female roles were portrayed by males due to societal customs, the box office results were excellent. At that time, Shanghai cinema was heavily influenced by the exaggerated acting style of crude stage plays. Apart from a few leads, most roles were played by the director's relatives and friends. In 1914, the outbreak of World War I led to the eventual closure of Asia Film Company due to interruptions in film stock supply and other reasons. Sichuan Zhang and Zheng Zhengqiu had no choice but to continue seeking opportunities to make movies. At the same time, the school of Mandarin Ducks and Butterflies novels gave rise to various genres such as romance, martial arts, detective, comedy, history, etc. Movies adapted from these stories began to gain popularity. Female characters in films were no longer portrayed by male actors, and Shanghai saw the rise of many female movie stars. In 1922, the young businessman Run Jie invested in the Laughing Stage, where the main program was still crude stage plays. Run Jie brought in Sichuan Zhang and Zheng Zhengqiu to serve as consultants and managers. However, by this time, crude stage plays had already declined in China. A year later, Sichuan Zhang and Zheng Zhengqiu, who had always wanted to make movies, founded the Star Motion Picture Company. Their film, Orphan Rescue's Grandfather, achieved great box office success. This greatly inspired Run Jie, leading him to decide to establish his own film company. In 1923, Li Minwei, a member of the Alliance, founded the Mingxin Film Corporation in Hong Kong. Due to the 1925 strike in Hong Kong, the company was forced to move to Shanghai. After a few years and a merger with 3 other film companies, it became one of the 3 largest film companies in China at that time, known as Lianhua Film Corporation. It can be said that this strike reshaped the history of Hong Kong cinema. Back in Shanghai in 1925, Run Jie founded the Tianyi Film Company. The key roles within the company, including screenwriting and directing, were assumed by several of Run Jie's brothers. Among them, a young man named Run Shaw was responsible for cleaning, as Run Jie did not consider him to possess filmmaking talent. Unlike other film companies, Tianyi Film Company viewed films as a commercial investment. Given the substantial profits in the film industry at that time, Run Jie's business strategy focused on low costs, rapid production, and high output. Most of the films produced were based on Chinese folk legends, combined with popular Hollywood tales such as The Three Musketeers and Robin Hood, which were well received in China. Run Jie used martial arts novels as a blueprint and created China's first kung fu film, Li Fi Fi the Heroing, centered around the story of a female knight. However, kung fu films weren't very popular at the time, and Tianyi Film Company faced fierce competition from its counterparts. For instance, in 1927, when the Mingxin Film Company was making Mulan, they deliberately recruited 300 to 400 soldiers to play roles, traveled to Hunan in China for shooting, and spent half a year filming. Meanwhile, Tianyi Film Company also produced a Mulan film, hiring only 10 actors and shooting in Shanghai. They completed the film in just 1 month, managing to release it before Mingxin's Mulan. Consequently, the production cycles for kung fu films among various companies were extremely short, resulting in rough production quality. Unable to compete with the legendary Hollywood story films, kung fu films of that era were not well received. This situation continued until 1928. With the release of The Burning of the Red Lotus Temple, the public began to accept and enjoy the genre of kung fu films. In order to depict the martial artists' fights, the film used scenic techniques and introduced the use of wires for the first time to portray characters' flying movements. The action actors were all Peking opera performers, and the script was adapted from martial arts novels. For the next century, kung fu films followed this model for creation. The Burning of the Red Lotus Temple, whether in terms of commercial aspects or innovative production techniques, propelled the advancement of kung fu films, leading to the release of various types of kung fu films. At the age of 21, Wu Lai-chu starred in A Warrior of the Northeast, as she had been learning kung fu since the age of 17, making her the first generation of female kung fu film stars in China. In that year, China had 106 cinemas, with a quarter of them located in Shanghai. There were 175 film companies in China, with 141 of them based in Shanghai. A total of 400 films were produced in Shanghai that year, including 250 kung fu films. From the 1920s to the 1930s, Shanghai's film industry experienced rapid development. Various genres of films continuously broke box office records, and specialized roles emerged. English-language films were even produced. Runjie Shaw's Tianyi Film Company mainly focused on kung fu films. For instance, in 1933, the sensational Cantonese opera film White Gold Dragon, adapted from the 1925 Broadway play The Princess and the Servant, starred and was produced by Cantonese opera master Sit Kok-sin. This marked the first integration of Chinese opera and film after the birth of sound cinema. During the film's screening in Shanghai, an incident occurred where the audience attacked the actors, resulting in injuries to Sit Kok-sin. He returned to Hong Kong to recuperate. Upon his return to Shanghai, he was accompanied by a bodyguard named Lao Jam, who owned 8 martial arts studios in Guangzhou. Sit Kok-sin and Lao Jam became each other's teachers, with one learning drama and the other learning martial arts. In 1934, the Republic of China government established the Film Inspection Committee to censor movies with leftist ideologies. However, the outcome was the prohibition of mostly kung fu films. Audiences interested in kung fu movies could only imagine through words. As a result, a landmark martial arts novel titled Legend of the Swordsman of the Mountains of Shu was born. The author, Huanzhu Luzhu, defined and categorized martial arts, weapons, and schools in the novel, which had a significant impact on later kung fu films. With this theoretical basis established, it was only a matter of time before creators started producing new styles of kung fu movies. After settling in Beijing, Huanzhu Luzhu had a wealthy neighbor named Hu, whose child often traded opium for the opportunity to listen to stories. Little did Huanzhu Luzhu imagine that this child, named King Hu, would rewrite the history of kung fu movies over 20 years later. In addition to kung fu films in this review, Cantonese language films were also affected. Tianyi Film Company's main business was hit hard. In order to alleviate the economic pressure, Runjie Shaw had no choice but to establish a branch in Hong Kong to focus on producing Cantonese language films for the Southeast Asian market. A large number of kung fu film production teams came to Hong Kong. After returning to Hong Kong, Sit Kok-sin continued to improve Cantonese opera. He brought in a Peking opera martial artist from Shanghai named Xiu Tian Yuan, who taught martial arts to Cantonese opera actors within the troupe. In addition to working as a fight choreographer and martial arts instructor for a living, Xiu Tian Yuan also worked as a stunt double and extra on film sets, thus entering the film industry. After the 918 incident, almost all of Shanghai's movie theaters were destroyed. Tianyi Movie Company relocated its operations to Hong Kong and transformed its Hong Kong branch into Nanyang Film Company, which provided film sources for its cinemas in places like Singapore. Additionally, many Shanghai filmmakers seeking refuge from the war also came to Hong Kong. For example, sound engineer Kwang Zhan, who localized imported film equipment, established the National Film Production Factory after arriving in Hong Kong. He began improving sound film technology and invited a friend named Peng Hu to come to Hong Kong. This friend, who was the assistant manager of a cinema, thus began his directing career. Even this temporary sanctuary of Hong Kong couldn't escape the fate of being occupied by the Japanese forces. After the Japanese occupied all of Southeast Asia, China's film industry came to a complete standstill.